just go through some slides with you on hybrid learning.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to speak to you a little bit more about what actually is hybrid learning. And I thought it'd be really good to start off by actually discussing it in the chat. So I think there's lots of buzzwords flying around at the moment. We've got hybrid learning, we've got remote learning, blended learning, and we kind of don't really know which is which, or they're all kind of merge into one. So I've posed that question to you, and it'd be really good to hear from you guys about what you think hybrid learning is. What does it look like currently? What does it make you think of when you say, oh, I want to have some successful hybrid learning? What does that look like to you? So if you could have a little think about answering that in the chat, that would be fantastic. What is hybrid learning? Any ideas, anything's welcome in there, any thoughts on what it could be, just to get us started. Some children at home joining others who are in school in a lesson. Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of what everyone automatically goes to for what hybrid learning is. It's that kind of combination, range of different approaches involving tech and traditional paper and pen. So mixing the two, learning involves face-to-face and digital. Yeah, these are all exactly what it is. And I think as well, it kind of involves all of those. It involves remote learning, it involves blended learning, it involves a range of things. This is actually kind of, so we've got here, educating a group of students where some are remote and some are present, ensuring that the experience for the remote students is better than an asynchronous approach, while ensuring the students present do not have their learning negatively impacted. That's actually a really good point, is that whole thing about making sure that they're both having a significant learning experience, because trying to teach children from a distance is really challenging. So we need to try and make sure it's smooth and that it is actually affecting them and impacting them in their lessons. So here it says hybrid learning is an educational model, as you guys said, where some students attend class in person while others join virtually from home. Educators teach remote and in person at the same time using conferencing hardware and software. But as I think somebody also said, it is all about that synchronous and asynchronous learning. And I think the thing that we as educators need to not forget is that it's not always going to be successful if everything is synchronous and live. Yeah, that we need to have that kind of blended hybrid approach using a mixture of all these tools. That's going to get the best outcomes for our children. So on the left here, we've got asynchronous. So we've got discussion boards, quizzes, polls, and I really like that kind of self-paced learning, and having a blend of that with the synchronous, which is the virtual classroom, the live chat, the live text, the live audio. And I think the best sort of way to get hybrid classroom being effective is to have an amalgamation of the two and have that embedded in your school. But that for me was kind of the biggest thing. And I think this quote really sort of pulled that out for me. To get the full benefit of online learning, there needs to be a concerted effort to provide structure and go beyond replicating a physical class lecture through video capabilities. Instead, using a range of collaboration tools and engagement methods that promote inclusion, personalization, and intelligence. And I think that really pulls up on that notion that you were saying, that we have to make sure that the learning that we are producing that is hybrid does actually engage and does actually personalize, and so that all learners are having an impactful and a meaningful experience when they are having that remote or in-class lesson. It's a very challenging thing to do, and it's just another hat for teachers to put on, along with all the other ones you're probably wearing. So it is, it's a tricky one, but it's one that when done right can be really effective. And especially nowadays, we need to be making sure the children have been out of class for so long. It is part of our role to make sure that they are getting the best form, best quality learning that they possibly can. So on that note, we are now going to have a little look at how two schools are doing it in different ways, both fantastic. And we're going to hear a little bit about what they're doing, and hopefully that can give you guys a bit of inspiration for hybrid learning itself. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over now. I don't know, Richard or Alice.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. That's fantastic. Thanks for that introduction there to hybrid learning. That's great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hand over to Alice and David in the classroom there. And Alice and David are going to do a bit of a presentation there. Like I said earlier, Lady Barn are doing some wonderful stuff. Lady Barn House are doing some wonderful stuff at their school. So I'm really quite excited to see what Alice and David are going to show us today. So Alice, I'll hand over to you if that's okay.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm just going to share our screen and take us back to the start of our presentation. Sorry. Okay. Yes, please. You can do it at the bottom. Okay, so we are both working year 6, and we're just going to share with you what we've done and kind of how it's evolved from the first school closure to where we're at now, and basically what a day, an ideal day for us looks like with our hybrid learning. So we use Shobi. We started off using Microsoft Teams combined with OneNote. We moved to Shobi, we kind of migrated to Shobi as a whole school because it's so user-friendly for the children and also for all of the adults involved as well, the parents and fellow teachers. And as you can see, this is a class discussion wall. This is my class's discussion wall. And we use Shobi in combination with Zoom, and we Zoom every day at 9 and 11 without fail for maths and English. So we're keeping our core subjects at the forefront, and the children click on a recurring link and they appear, and I'll just show you what it looks like on the next slide. So you can see that's the yellow circled images, myself with some of the key workers, and then you can see the various children beaming in from wherever they are, ready to learn. So that's kind of how our setup looks at 9 and 11 every day. Just a few things that I thought it would be worth sharing is how we've modified our Zoom settings. So some teachers in our school have got the chat off entirely. I think that's probably younger year groups. We have it on in year 6 because sometimes you find the quieter children are more likely to type something to you than unmute and say it out loud. I've got the private chat function turned off for obvious reasons. Something I found useful is having a sound notification when a child joins or leaves, because sometimes when you are sharing the screen, you might not notice that somebody's waiting to come in, and then the sound that means they've left means you've lost someone, and then you can kind of go and investigate why that might be. The annotation function is really useful because it can turn your Zoom screen into a whiteboard, and then the breakout room function we also are newly enjoying, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So the ground rules when we were first setting up this hybrid process and using Zoom were key and agreed on across school, again with staff, children and their parents. And it's been absolutely crucial for us to have those high expectations from the start in order to make this successful and sustainable.
Yeah, making sure that the children understand they're expected to come at particular times of the day and in a particular fashion as well, you know, dressed appropriately, not in bed, not eating cereal. I think it's important that no matter how difficult this is, and we know it's difficult for them, it is still a school day and they're expected to attend just like they would. It's the best way to make this work as though they're at school.
So a really key question is how we maintain their attention at home and in class, and we've got a few key things that we use. Yeah,
the apps we've highlighted here we enjoy using because they're fast-paced. They're colourful, they come with music, and they provide a challenge. And what we like best from these, particularly Kahoot and quizzes, is what we found is that they're really good mental starters. More fun even than a normal mental maths test with a recorded voice, because they give children the graphical feedback which they really like and they look forward to. On the left there, we've got Socrative, which is something that links really well with Shobi. The Google Forms, I'll mention later, allows us to create tasks, longer tasks that give feedback. And then Explain Everything is something we've recently started to look at, which is really a wonderful way of letting the children collaborate with us or by themselves on a big giant canvas, which looks like it's really promising as well.
David just mentioned the collaboration with Explain Everything, and something that we're newly exploring is the use of breakout rooms in Zoom, because what we found with our hybrid learning is that the main thing missing was the children being able to collaborate with each other, and it's what they're really missing from home as well. So using a breakout room combined with an Explain Everything board has really filled that missing gap. So when we're on Zoom, we can put the children into groups of our choice, into several kind of off rooms, and we can broadcast to all of them at once. We can move them between groups, we can call them back, we're still very much in control, we can move between rooms and see how the groups are getting on. We produced this poster again to share with all stakeholders, and the key one to really draw your attention to is the bottom one in the middle. The element of trust is huge, because as you would if they were working in the corridor or in a side room, you can't see them all the time in the breakout rooms. You can only see the breakout room you are in. So the element of trust is huge, but it is such a useful tool for collaboration, because the children can be in a breakout room and collaborating on an Explain Everything document. This is something from yesterday's humanities lesson, where the children were working on mountain ranges. And as you can see, like David said, it's like a whiteboard, and they can really do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, the important thing about this is, particularly for something like a humanities lesson, that what the children lose the most from being separated from each other is that collaborative side of learning. And the other thing that this allows is it allows to break down the barrier between home and school, because what you end up is groups inside Zoom of children who are at school mixed with children who are not, and actually you're making that as close an experience as possible to not being separated and making it a normal school day.
This is a really important question, and I think it's the one that we've spent the most time trying to address, because we were certainly thinking, how do we reach them when they're at home? How do we get to them and make sure they're okay and that they understand?
Yeah, the number one thing for me, even when we started this on the first lockdown, was we are able to set them some work. We figured out how to communicate with them online, but that's not enough. We need to replicate a school day. And as a teacher, the most difficult thing to do, even when you're in school together, is that assessment for learning, is that being aware of what the children are doing and not just leaving it till the end of the day. And it's not an easy process. It's one that we're getting used to. And we're doing a lot of it through trial and error. We're trying different ways of using our formats, our platforms, in order to work with the children live, as if over their shoulder. So, for example, if we were to set a Zoom, we might do it in different ways. We could start the Zoom off and do the teacher input, the mental starters, have a bit of fun with that, and then set them off on the task, and maybe they come back to talk about the task later. We could keep the Zoom running. That would allow us to do some mini plenaries. It would allow the children to ask us questions if they get stuck. Another option is to keep a separate group, maybe an intervention group that you've pre-selected, or those children who are choosing to stay behind because they might want some help. Away from Zoom, another option is also on Shobi. What we've done to differentiate is that you can set different documents, different tasks to different children, but without them necessarily knowing it as well, because the only task that they're going to do appears in their box. Another way to differentiate is by extension. So you can set that pace and challenge by unlocking tasks only when the child has talked to you, maybe in the chat, that they've completed a task. You can go and have a look, check that they've done it correctly, and unlock another task for them. And a final way that we've also recently found is, particularly when writing essays, if they're now moving to typing essays, we found that if we create a shared Word document, for example, that we're using Outlook, using Office.com, then we can also actually communicate with them live in the document and collaborate with them, make notes in the document and make adjustments while they're working. So these are some of the ways that we've recently found are being useful to give us that variation in terms of how we're reaching all the children through these lessons.
Still very much feels like we're kind of all over them and all over their work in a sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was the most important thing to us is, do we know what they're doing like we would if they were in the classroom?
How do we prepare resources? Well, we do a lot of scanning. I scan on my phone quite often, and there are various apps out there that are free. We use the scanner in school because we're lucky enough to be in school, but really it makes no difference. The main thing I wanted to share with you is that this is a document editing website where you can pretty much do anything you want to a PDF. And really this has been day to day, just a go-to for us having to, for example, just say you've got something off Twinkle and you want to cut bits out or change things or write over them. You can blank out things on the PDF, put your own things in. You can delete the, if sometimes they come with answers pages at the bottom, you can delete that page off if you want to upload it.
Or take the Twinkle off and make it look like you did it. That's another option. You
can also reorder documents. You can do PDF to anything pretty much. And then this website is free. The only thing is, I think you only get 3 downloads within an hour unless you pay. So it's slightly restricted, but it's just been so useful for us. But apart from that, resourcing hasn't been any different really. And what's worth saying as well is because we were using Showbie when all of the children were in school, we were uploading things rather than printing them. And already in the autumn term, we've used so much less paper.
Okay, so this is the important slide really in terms of the blended learning, what are we calling it, hybrid learning, what we were talking about in the previous presentation. How can we make it the same? So here's the point that we've reached at Lady Barn recently, and it's something that we've been working towards, and we were certainly taking this approach as far back as we could. It's all about now the teacher being with their own class and treating it as they were before, as a class unit, regardless of where the children are.
Or where the teacher is as well, because we're part of a 3-form entry school, and our partner, third partner teacher, does everything that we do from home.
Yeah, the adult in the classroom, as you might have known from other schools, if you've talked to other teachers, sometimes it could be a TA. The adult in the classroom is there because, well, obviously we need an adult with the children. But the bottom line is, those children in that class, for example, my 20 in my class, are going to have me take the lesson, whether they're in school or at home. They're all watching the Zoom. They can all see what I'm doing, and on Showbie, they're all set the same tasks as well. So they are working on the same timetable, and everything's the same. So I think the answer to that one really is, for us, as much as possible, it's the same experience.
And what's nice as well is that the children at home can see that the children in class are getting the same experience because they can see them and us. And that's the same whether the teacher's at home or not, because the children from school still go into the same Zoom. Okay, what is the workload like? Something that's absolutely crucial for us is obviously we still plan, we still make resources, we still mark. The workload is the same in that respect. Something that we were doing at the start of the first school closure was we were spending absolutely hours recording teaching videos. And now, because we are going live every day, we're not doing that. And that's made such a massive difference to our workload, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's still a place for the recorded videos. For example, maybe once a week on something that might need repeating, that might be more challenging or more technical. There's also the ability on the Explain Everything, once we start getting to grips with that, and we recommend that one, to actually record yourself alongside the presentation so that the children can go back and look at it.
Sometimes, for example, with our humanities lessons, we weren't live there, so we did use a screen recorder on an iPad to explain to them what we wanted to do. And sometimes if there's a maths question that loads of people are struggling with, we'll do a quick explanation, screen record on an iPad again, and upload that to Showbie. But crucially, we're not having to explain our key difficult mathematical and English concepts through a video. We're able to do it us.
Yeah, and that obviously combined with the Zoom gives them the chance to feedback directly on what they don't understand and pick up on those cues really. The final thing I want to mention is about the Google Forms is an example of where there's a bit of a trade-off between putting the work in preparation, but then something like a Google Forms would actually mark it for you rather than sitting and marking those things onerously. And you get the same feedback, you actually get the assessment through the iPad, so it's really useful to set worksheets that way. And I think that what we've noticed is a lot of the things that we're doing, we would carry on doing when the children do come back because they've actually helped us do our job so much.
Yeah. Are we changing the work for those expected for those at home compared to those in class? Essentially, the answer to that one is no.
And I think that, yeah, that's the key point, isn't it? What we try to work towards is that they are doing the same thing.
Yeah. Feedback really depends on the platform you're using. We've mentioned Showbie several times and we really do like it. We're still able to follow our marking policy using Showbie, which is key regardless of whether the children are at home or at school. We can record voice notes to them, we can give them scores out of something, we can type feedback or we can handwrite it over their work. So very much the same there, and it's nice to do a variety for all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, in the same way that we do variety in class, a lot of the time we might want to mark on the go, see how they're going, and we've talked about ways that we're working collaboratively with them so that we can see what they're up to and make alterations before they finish their work.
Yeah, and that is key, getting to them before they can go seriously off-piste in maths is especially useful, and we're finding we're able to do that more and more often. Finally, we've just put together the list of websites we mentioned, and also it's probably worth acknowledging that we've been extremely lucky that our senior management and Jigsaw have really enabled us, haven't they, to actually put what we knew we wanted to do from the start into practice, because I certainly feel fortunate that we're in this position with our at-home and in-school learners.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the most difficult thing, I think, for every teacher is that loss of control when all you are doing is hoping that they're doing the work and seeing it at the end, chasing it up. And we wanted to get rid of that. We wanted it to be as though the class is running as normal. And I think we've reached that point, haven't we?
And when we started, we felt very blind in a lot of ways, didn't we? But now...
it's about finding the right platforms and making sure that you're consistent with them throughout the school and that the children are au fait with how to use them and that it's working well, but also noting that when something good comes along, which Jigsaw have brought, great meeting the other day, for example, on Explain Everything, that when that happens, that we find ways to incorporate them and make them work.
And it is about trying and sometimes failing and then keeping on trying, because the children are only in such good habits because we've persevered so much with showing them again and again and again. And today I had a lesson where I wanted to pull my hair out using documents, but we got there in the end through lots of screen sharing. So it's just about really, persevering. But I think that's pretty much it from us, unless anyone has any questions.
I mean, Alice and David, that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's so inspiring seeing what you're doing at the school. It really is, and I'm just blown away by that. And and you've clearly both got a real big passion to making this work, and it is fantastic. I do have some questions. I think what we'll do is we'll save the questions until Megan has done her presentation. But thank you so much, guys. I think there's some fantastic ideas there. So impressed with what you just delivered. It's really great. So, but if you could just obviously stick around, and we'll hopefully get to some questions after Megan's done her presentation. So over to you, Megan. Thank you. Yeah, and you're going to see a very similar workflow solution in the next section, because once again, Showbie was my go-to. So just to put a bit of background on this was the school that I worked at before I worked for Jigsaw, and I only left there in December. So I was working with them through the first lockdown. We'd been using Showbie for years and had one-to-one iPads. So just to put that into context, and then I'll explain it a little bit afterwards as well. Let me know. Can I have a thumbs up if you can hear the sound?
your mic and tell me what time is on the clock face?
The time would be 7:15.
Everyone in class has made this time, so hopefully that matches the time that you had at home. Let's look at how few is together. And then my hour, I need to add on 2 more of them. So at the moment it's past 3, I need to add 2 more hours, so it's going to go to past 4, past 5. Okay, so that's my new time. Who can tell me what the new time is? How do we say that time?
Okay, so that was just a little video that I put together to sort of demonstrate how they were doing hybrid learning at Wingfield. And I just wanted to talk you through it a little bit and explain the different parts and the different elements and how they got there. So as I said before, they were really lucky, very similar to Lady Barn, because they had sort of Shobi was embedded and technology was embedded. So when it came to setting this up and doing this, they didn't have to teach the children any new skills. They didn't have to, everyone was kind of already on board with it. And they already had Shobi, so all they did was made sure that they had the live version and they were using Shobi Lives to have those chats. And as you can see here, the teacher has got her iPad set up at the front, and her laptop, and she's screen sharing so that, number one, she can edit on the board so the kids at school can see, and so can the children at home. So the kids at home can see both of the screens, the one that's on the board in the class, and they can hear their classmates, they can hear the teacher, and they can see the modelling, which that they always thought was a really key thing. They wanted the children to be able to see what was being modelled, as that's often quite tricky. And we all know that when you're trying to record videos and explain, it's quite hard. You want to use actions and things. So this kind of allowed for that. The interactivity with the children at home was really, really key as well. They wanted the children at home to be part of the kids in school. So sometimes they had the kids in school answering the questions, the children at home answering the questions, and they would alternate between the two to make sure everyone felt like they were included and a part of it. And this was also a really good example of how well embedded and ingrained the kind of rules and expectations were. I know Alice was talking about those high expectations. So the children were sort of trained very well to turn their microphone on when they were asked and wanted to contribute, and then turn it off again so that they weren't interrupting the lesson. And that's really key to make sure that they're feeling part of it. And as I said before, the ability to see the modelling, like having those little clocks and things, having the teacher there, being able to see them was a really, really big part for them. And then exactly the same, all the children are completing the same learning. They are all doing the same task. Obviously, you've got the differentiation, but they're all logging on. So the children at school have got their iPads, the children at home have got their iPads, and they've all been sent the same documents. And I know Alice mentioned this as well, the fact that they've been using the iPads for resources for a couple of years means that the teachers were able to just use the lessons as normal. If you're looking at this PowerPoint presentation is one that they would have used last year in year 4 and adapted it. They didn't have to make any big changes to the way they were teaching, the way they were modelling, and the resources that they were sharing with the children. It meant that everyone was involved and everyone could participate, which is a really nice thing. And it's that workload of the teachers, not wanting to have to make so many more resources and adapt so much, just being able to flick quite quickly. The other thing it really allowed for them and that they wanted to pull on was that independence. So they've really blended synchronous and asynchronous. So they've got the live lessons, but they've also got tasks. Like you can see here, a child is reading, but she struggles with reading. So she's got some voice notes to help her along. So she can go about the normal activities, but at her own pace, which they always thought that was a really important part. That sometimes the children who maybe before were not as confident have the ability with the iPad to listen to things and record their voice back. So they have that independence, that flexibility. And again, I mentioned the flexibility. I also meant flexibility for staff. You can see here very differently. This teacher prefers to teach using a good old flip chart rather than using their Apple Pencil. So he has the capability of doing that. He just set his MacBook up in a different way, pointed it at the different thing. The children can still see the screen, and on the television in the class, the top screen is on show there. So everyone in class and at home can see the same. And then really importantly, the ability to stay in touch with the class, being able to chat. They keep their class chat open after the lesson has finished so that they can ask questions, that they can, like we were saying earlier, they can keep on top and catch those children who maybe struggled. The class teacher also sends off children who are confident, and anyone who'd like to ask questions stay on the live chat for a little bit just to make sure that they can clarify any issues that are going on. Now, the couple of the logistics that they went through, and I went through the process with them, is they immediately shortened the lessons. So they didn't want to recreate an hour-long lesson for children at home. They thought that'd be a bit much. So they shortened them to do sort of half an hour. They figured they can't recreate it completely, so they do half an hour, and they break it up with little activities in between. You have to have those rules and expectations and ease in slowly. So they started off with a registration, and they only met for a registration for a few days because the kids were so excited to be on a live class. And then they did a maths lesson and then an English lesson. So they built that up slowly and surely so that all the parents and the children were ready for it. They scheduled the sessions throughout the day. In the school they're in, there were lots of families who maybe only had one device. So they wanted to make sure that every child could access their lesson. So they have a set time for each year group. So year 3 would be on at 9 o'clock. Year 4 would be on at 9:30. So that if children have only got one device and there's 2 of them in different year groups, they can both attend their lesson. And be problem ready. Think about the parents and the technical side of it. The school set up and made loads of tutorial videos and shared them on Twitter to help people log in and know what to do. And then that bit, providing space for discussion, making sure that they're aware of anything, any children that maybe didn't get something or want to go over it again, and they'll send little voice notes or little screen recordings just to make sure that everyone is up to scratch on that. And then just to reiterate, it's so important that you find the workflow solution that works for you, and assessment tools, quizzing tools. So you need to be able to make sure that whatever you're using, it is built for you. You know how to do it. You feel confident with it. So do your children. And then again, the assessing, these tools are all fantastic because they, I think as it was mentioned before, they do the marking for you. So it's a really nice way to save time for you, but also keep the kids active and engaged. It's a really nice little thing. So that's all from me and thinking about Wingfield. I'm going to hand back over to Richard now, who's going to give you a chance to sort of ask questions and share your own experiences and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Fantastic. You know, I'm really glad you're working with Jigsaw, so you could actually help other schools do this kind of stuff now. So, I mean, it's fantastic to see the kind of stuff that you're doing. It's so impressive that you've done in the past. And obviously the school is continuing with this from the fact that you're not there. So I think that's brilliant. And so we've got about 10 minutes left of our webinar. I would like to open it up for questions really for either Megan, Alice or Neil. On something that I did see a hand up actually. I think it was Samantha had their hand up, but it's obviously gone now. But if the microphone and camera has been enabled, so if you want to unmute your microphone and camera, please feel free. Samantha, yes, you've got your hand up there, so feel free to unmute, and if you want to unmute your camera, then please feel free to. Are you there, Samantha? Okay. All right. So I tell you what, I do. Why Samantha may be trying to unmute. Well, I do have a question actually for Alice, and possibly Megan as well. I mean, obviously hybrid learning is something that we've been thrown into as a result of the pandemic. What I'm keen to maybe find out is, when the pandemic is completely over, when we're back to normal, hopefully sooner than later, how can the stuff that you've been doing now really continue? Because obviously, you know, there's some incredible stuff that you're doing, and we want to keep it going. So what could you do as a school to maybe continue this kind of hybrid experience?
From our point of view, it's really incorporating the platforms that we've brought in as a result of the situation into our day-to-day teaching practices. So the children love a Socrative space race, for example, and we weren't really using them before, even though we knew it was there. Because I suppose we weren't using them because we hadn't got used to using them, so it was a bit too much effort. I don't know, maybe, do you think, I don't know, they weren't a part of our day-to-day practice, but because they are now, it's going to be a lot easier to make them continue to be so.
I think it's important to say in many ways, although the pandemic is the worst thing that has ever happened to most of us, it has accelerated something that I think schools were moving towards. Certainly we were, but it's just sped that process up. And I think if you look at it from a very basic point of view, we're not printing out as much. When they come back, we will simply set their work on. They'll also have books, because in the end, children writing is still a lovely thing, and it will be a mix. It's a mix now. We forgot to mention that we still have them write in their books and take photographs and upload their work. It's important that it's both. But here's an example. In the next half term, we're going to be doing some modules, some new things that the children in Year 6 get to do after their entrance exams, and we're using some Apple books.
We're actually using the Let's Create books that we saw in Neil's.
Yeah, so I'm doing the photography unit and Alice is doing
the music one. So we're really excited about that, and I think we might not have necessarily looked at that if we weren't in this situation. I don't know. But
by the same token, we've already seen those books. They look like they're going to guide us through it, and that will actually also say next year, when we're hopefully all back in school, but we're still going to use that same tech. We're still going to use the Apple tech and the books as a guide, and we've done it already. So there's no need to move away from it for a lot of things.
And everything that we've created as a result of this, you know, all of the scanning that we've done has been actually such an investment, because the resources, I mean, like, you can say they're at your fingertips if they're in, I don't know, we still have quite a lot of folders, to be honest, of sheets to photocopy, but they've just become quite obsolete because of the scanning that we're doing and the editing and everything that we've been forced to do. It's just moved us on leaps and bounds, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, and another important thing to think of is this is at least, another half-term minimum. We only want to investigate more things. I saw some of the things in Neil's piece earlier on that I looked at and thought, I've seen them, we haven't incorporated them yet, let's do it. So we've just because we've been doing this, we've still got a ways to go, and I think we've got another half-term's worth, especially with the Year 6. We work in a school where they've already done entrance exams, and we've got a unique opportunity to try stuff out.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you guys. I mean, it really is inspiring, and hearing what you're doing there. I mean, I'm just so pleased we're recording this webinar, because I think, you know, we've had a few attendees, but I think if we can get this out to more schools, I think they're going to be really inspired by what you're doing. So thanks so much. Neil, you've got a question there.
Yeah, no, just an observation, actually. I think, you know, all the presentations from both schools have talked about student feedback and what they're enjoying being such a big driver for what's incorporated and what's introduced. And I was speaking to a principal of a sixth form college this morning who said they're in exactly the same place, where it's been fascinating that some aspects of their blended and hybrid provision has been really popular with students who are fairly quiet but actually very engaged in some of the digital ways of communicating and joining in. So they don't want to lose that. They want to find ways to have different ways for students to engage with learning materials and to work collaboratively, because they found it's really engaging for certain groups of students who've really preferred it in some ways.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And Megan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it for the longevity of it. My part that when I worked at that school at Wingfield, there was a partnership of schools, and one of the schools was an SEN school, so it obviously needed larger provisions, and they often have children going into hospitals and things because they're unwell. So when we started this, they've automatically now thought about this as a really long-term thing for those children who are perhaps unwell or can't come into school for any reason. They're now thinking about continuing live lessons so that all children can access that learning, and they can also access learning from other schools. So for example, if they are working at different age group levels and things like that, they can join in other things, even if they're at home or unfortunately at hospital. So it is something that I know some schools are continuing, even when it's just opened up possibilities that we didn't really think about before, I think.
No.
Something we've realised is we're never going to have another snow day.
Is that a good thing? No, thank you so much, guys. Has anybody else got any other questions? I mean, whether you can I know, Samantha, you've got your hand up again. I don't know whether you've got a problem with unmuting your microphone. Maybe you want to ask your question in chat, and then we can potentially answer that question. So I'm conscious of time. We've got about a minute left of the webinar. I'm quite happy to maybe go on a couple of minutes extra if you want to get your question in, so we can answer it. But maybe while Samantha's doing that, if anybody else has got anything, please let me know. But I would just like to just thank Neil, obviously, for joining us on behalf of Apple. I think, you know, there's so much now that the potential is incredible. It really excites me. And working at Jigsaw now, and working in the team that we've got with Paul, myself, Megan and Terry, just being able to use this technology to support so many different schools, it really is exciting. And I can't, to be honest with you, Alice, I can't wait to come and see your school and be there, because I know that there's loads we can do at your school as well, in terms of moving forward. So, but I would just like to thank you, Neil, and thank you, Alice and David, for doing fantastic presentations, and obviously Megan, part of our team. So proud that you're part of our team. So thank you so much. Samantha, I'm just having a look and see if you have managed to insert it. Okay, if there is a problem, if anybody does have any questions, then please feel free to message us at Jigsaw, and we will more than happy get back to you. And I do recognise a few names on the list here, so and I believe you've got my email address, or at least somebody at Jigsaw. So please contact us, and then we can answer any questions that you may have in the future. So on that note, is there anybody else want to just finish off with anything? Okay, on that note, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, thank you, Neil and Alice and David and Megan, of course, for the presentations. And you take care, and please, everyone, stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.